hello there, folks. It's another episode. Yeah, it's another episode of Würfelcast, episode 38. Topic of the day is top 10 games best with max player count. Though with this topic, it's there are games that are best with that number and also best with another number. So it's also subjective, first of all. And
no, this is a definitive list.
Definitive list, yeah. This one thing when I started doing this was like I like it equally with that amount of players and that amount of players. Like if the game is 2 to 5, I can play it 4 or 5. I don't care. So that could end up on my list. So it's not so restrictive. But this one is all a future. First of all, we dive into our recent plays. For that, I will do some magic and have a board game geek right here. So, Kyle, why don't you start?
Okay, I'm going to start with a game that I played very recently. It arrived just this week. The game is called Destinies. And so this is it's an iteration on Chronicles of Crime, but it really is a very different game. So initially I was confused when it was being advertised on Kickstarter because it looked like it was an expansion for the Joan of Arc game. It's not. It's kind of at that time period, and the figures, I think, are from the same, I don't know, sculptor or something. But what it is it is a 3-player, which is an odd player count, but a 3-player non-cooperative kind of a version of the Chronicles of Crime type game. So what you're doing is you have a character, and that character has a secret mission, which is written on the back of the card. You don't have to remember it or anything. But for example, one character, there was a werewolf, and she wanted to try and break the werewolf's curse and turn it back human. Okay, so it says in order to do this, you have to find 2 of this kind of thing and take it to this location. And then there's a map, and you're walking around the map. Each turn you can move and then take sort of one investigative action, and which would be looking at a place or talking to a person. And there are some sort of scripts and things you can do on your phone that will help you resolve that action. The sort of main mechanism for doing that is you have 2 dice that are yours, and then there are 3 effort dice that are spent when you use them, and you can get them back as well. And then you'll roll them, and you'll add up the numbers, and you have this little chart you can see on those slider-looking things down below that player mat. And for example, if in the top row you have markers at 4, 7, and 8, and you roll an 8, then that means you have 3 successes. And so as the game progresses, you'll move those little tokens around, which will help you to improve your skills or make them less effective. And then that you enter how many successes you have into the app. It tells you sort of the result. And ultimately, you're trying to complete your goal before anyone else does. And if you do that, you enter sort of what's called the finale. And then you have a bunch of tests and other actions to resolve. And if you succeed in getting through the finale first, you win. Also, you don't always have to roll the dice. Sometimes you'll have a card that, based on the nature of the test, seems like it would make sense. For example, if there is a wolf and it is attacking you, and you happen to have a leg of lamb, you could scan that leg of lamb card into the app. This is a made-up example, and essentially in the world of the game, toss the leg of lamb away, and then the wolf will go and chase it, and that will help you to pass the test as well. So you don't always have to roll the dice. You can use the various items that you get. And the game remembers the choices you make. And for example, if you do a lot of bad things, then when you go to pray, maybe the test is a little harder. Things like that. It was really very interesting. The game, I got it through Kickstarter, and it came with a bunch of expansions. I'm not sure, kind of like Chronicles of Crime, I'm not sure all of them are updated into the app yet. But there's a good 7 or 8 scenarios to play. you can also play it solo, and when you play it solo, you have a timer. So the app will tell you how many turns you have to reach your goal. And if you don't reach your goal, you lose. And there are ways to extend it through things that you do. So it's really a very interesting game. I liked Chronicles of Crime a lot. Not as much as a lot of people did, though. Some people really liked it. I liked it a lot. This one I think is much better. It's a little bit less of some. My problem with Chronicles was sometimes you just couldn't figure out how to get the game to progress. Sometimes there was just sort of a step that wasn't quite there, and then ultimately, you could sometimes brute force the answer. This one is very different. You really have to progress the story within the game, but the ways to do it are a lot more clear. And so I found that to be interesting. But what I think this game is, although its natural comparison is Chronicles of Crime, its real comparison is going to be something like Seventh Continent. And this is a much more streamlined and straightforward version of that type of a game. And it's also much shorter. I mean, it's not a short game by any means. It can last an hour or two. But, that game can last all night and half of the next day. And so this is just a very nice, easy to learn game. I mean, super easy, not very many rules at all. And you can really just set it up, listen to the story in the app or read it yourself. But there's narration if you want to listen. And then start playing and get into the story. And I was really very impressed with it.
Yeah, it's cool. I've seen that, and I realized it might not be the best choice for me, though I'm interested in this one because you said it's from the same people who made Chronicles of Crime. You have your codes and things. You said about Chronicles of Crime, you said that sometimes you don't know how to progress. But this one seems to be adventure. The Chronicles of Crime, it's a detective game. It's a deduction game, etc. So in Chronicles of Crime, when you feel like you don't know where to progress, then there's some kind of a detail that you missed or anything like that. So I do like that a lot. If I feel stuck, then I retrace my steps and then I find something, or I go and answer things. And that's it. So we can choose another scenario and play that or whatever. Or like if we go in there and answer those things and then we realize, oh, really? That was that? And then we feel a little bit stupid, etc. So this one, as you described it, I haven't not played that one. This one feels more like an adventure. So yeah, I can see how I'd rather not compare Chronicles of Crime with this one. So,
and I think that's fair. I think they are very different games. It's just that they use a very similar system, although you're scanning a lot less in this one than you are in Chronicles. And so the comparison is going to be natural.
Yeah.
So I don't know that they are a very good comparison, other than that they're the same publisher and I think some of the same designers, and have a similar mechanism. But I think, like I said, the better comparison is Seventh Continent.
All right, something on my wish list. So for my recent plays, I might do a little cheat because
not another video game.
No. I'm gonna mention we'll talk about one game. I'm gonna mention two games, but briefly, for one reason. For one of these games, and I got them at the same time, and I played them kind of in a row. And for one of these games, I need your opinion. Is that fair then?
Okay, go ahead.
So, first game, and I'm not gonna explain that game because you have talked about this game before. It's Nidavellir.
Oh.
Yes, I finally got Nidavellir. I got the French copy. It's not language independent, so I didn't care. Watch the video. I have rules online. So I did really like it. It's really good. I'm not going to explain it, but briefly, it's a bidding game, set collection game. You want to score the most points. Boom. And by bidding, you can upgrade your coins. Great system. I like that very much. I wasn't sure about all the heroes things. Some of them feel like, or maybe I just haven't seen. The thing about this game I just mentioned briefly is that the beginning of this game, especially probably the first play or first few plays, you don't really know how to progress and it feels lackluster. The further you go into the game, you feel like, oh, I can see it now. So for those who will go into the game for the first time, the beginning of the game is not exciting because you just don't know what to expect. You don't know what to, let's say, collect or something like that. This one gives you points. This one gives you points. Where to focus, etc. But the real question, because Kyle already talked about this one in some episodes before, I don't remember what, but you can watch other videos how it's played. There's a small expansion for that. A thing Valir.
Thing Valir, yeah.
Yeah, some kind of a thing Valir. And so if you can tell me, is the expansion worth getting into this one? Does it make it too, like, are there cards that are complex that's going to be a little bit hard for non-gamers or something like that? Does it complicate anything? No?
No, if I remember, the expansion is super small. It's in a box that's like this big. It's, I think, just one tiny deck of cards. And it just adds some more things. I think what it adds is another option or two, like you can make an artifact by doing some things. It's a very easy expansion. It's one that I would throw in and just really teach people from the beginning and not even say this is an expansion. It folds in very seamlessly.
All right. Yeah, I'll take your advice and I'll try to get the expansion next. All right, but the real game I wanted to talk about, and
okay, that was a pretend game.
Yeah, pretend game. That's
and a pretend expansion.
Yeah, Conspiracy Abyss Universe. But you talked about Destiny was a bigger game, so I'll throw in two small games. And
very well.
You know that I do love Abyss with all my heart because Abyss is just a wonderful, streamlined. It's everything I want in a card/board game, almost. So this one, as you can see here, this one has the art of Abyss. I mean, it's not Abyss. It's a different game. The Board Game Geek says it re-implements Abyss. I'm like, what? No, it's a little brother or sister of Abyss, trying to maybe replicate the ideas. You collect pearls, you collect keys, you get locations, but it's totally different game. You should not expect any kind of mechanical trace of Abyss here. At least for me, it's nowhere near. So, but I did really like the game, and the core of the game is that you basically create the pyramid of those lords of different colors. Those lords give you points, but you score the points of the biggest lords of each color only. And then you also, while you are creating this pyramid, going from up and down, from left to right, like the upside down pyramid. Whoa, wow, that was loud. Thunder is coming. And lightning, it's getting... Okay, exciting. Okay.
Sounded like a thunder truck.
Wow, I got scared. My God, what's that? Oh my God. Anyway, let's get... That was the... gods have forbid me to talk about the game. You know? So in this one as well, you can also arrange the cards in a way that they form kind of a group of the same colors. You can score extra points. And these cards have abilities like keys. If you collect two of the same, you get the new location. Location gives you extra points. That's it. Or they can give you pearls, and whoever has the most pearls or whatever, I'm not going to go into too much detail of the rules, will get 5 extra points at the end of the game. So you're trying to create a pyramid of cards so you can score the maximum number of points. Cool part about that one, it's this one is easy, straightforward. It's been in many games, nothing new. But a cool part about that one, which is also not new, but it's almost like from Abyss, where the more cards you take to choose from, the more choice you give to other players. So on your turn, you can grab 1 to 3 Lord cards from the deck, and you choose only one. If you grab all 3, you choose one, and 2 others will go into the discard. The discard is basically like a tableau of cards where the other players can then now pick the cards from. Whenever you pick from the deck, you can only get 1 card. But if in the discard pile there are several cards of the same color, you can grab them all and play them all in a row, So yeah, you can get more cards and combos and etc. Into this one. So extremely easy, a small tin box, beautiful, accessible. It was so easy to explain. It was easy to play, and has those strategic choices of, like, when I played 2-player with another player, we constantly think about how many cards should we get from there, or should we risk by pulling the cards from the deck, or getting them from the discard pile. So I'm sure I'm gonna get blue here, just 1 blue, but I want like blue with the key, not with the pearl. So I want to create the group of blues here. So constant thinking about that one from that small of a game. That was a kind surprise. Abyss, Conspiracy in Abyss Universe.
I heard about this at some point. Maybe it was even on a list of mine, like an anticipated list, but then I totally forgot about it. So there you go.
It's small. It's clever. I mean, like, you should definitely try it.
Sure.
You might like it. If you like a little bit of the chance going on. All right. So that's recent plays. And now we're going to get to the next topic, which is Cult of the Old. We're not getting younger each year, we're getting older, and that's why we should talk about some games that have been maybe forgotten, or maybe not, but let's say widely forgotten. I mean, there are some groups of people who love these games, but for me,
I don't know that these have always been forgotten. They're just a little older.
Yeah. I have some future games that
the one I'm going to talk about has not been forgotten. So,
is it Waters? No, just kidding. Okay,
Waters.
Forgotten Waters. Forgotten Waters.
That one doesn't meet our qualifier. I thought that it had been come out at least 3 years ago or something.
Yes,
5 years,
something like that. Yeah. So
I don't remember how many years.
No, it's we didn't make any distinctive kind of a rule about that one, but it should be quite a few years before. It's not like last year or a year before. Like 2019, it's still too fresh.
Okay, well, this one's definitely going to qualify, so it's just not been forgotten. We've talked about it before, but it kind of fits the theme of today, so that's why I kind of
Nidavellir? Okay, sorry, no. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, what's your pick?
So my pick, like I said, the recent game I chose, the old game, and of course the component game I'll talk about are all also sort of games that work really well with their max player counts. And so the game I'm talking about today, mostly because I got a shiny new one in the mail, is Kemet. And now Kemet came out in 2012, so it definitely fits the the requirements.
But I mean, should I use the new edition? Because the new edition is Cult of the New. But the old
that's why I said Kemet, not Kemet Blood and Sand.
All right, so I'm going to show you the old version then.
You show me the old version.
Okay.
Well, honestly, they're not that different.
Oh yeah.
So this is a game. This is one of those games early out that was really exciting because the whole point of the game was that it encouraged just very brutal aggression right from the moment that things started. Because the only way you really ever got points was winning a battle that you started, or controlling certain areas. And so really what you're doing in this game is you're collecting a resource, and then you have to take actions on this little pyramid of actions. And those actions are really going to help you get out into a fight. And then the strength of your fight is going to be influenced by a combination of a card that you play, the strength of your numbers, and some special abilities that you have, as well as some other cards you can play. And it was
Yeah.
really just very much a run out, fight, and try and get as many points as possible, because it was a race, I believe, to a certain number of points.
8 points, yeah.
Okay. And that is really how it is. And it was one of those games early on that if you played it with lower player counts, it was not nearly as good. When you played it with a large group, it really felt a lot better. It also was well known for having really nice figures. It had these, I don't know if they were washed or something, but they were this nice brown plastic instead of, oh, that's the new one.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Just looking at some new things, yeah.
Yeah. So the new one is exactly the same. The rules are the same. It has, I think, different power tiles in it, and it has Cthulhu in it. If you want, he's an optional. You can sub him in for something else. But really, that's it. There's very little different. These pyramids are a lot nicer. Instead of being a 4-sided die, they are a plastic pyramid that you put together, which is a nice. It's a nice way to do it, rather than rotating a die. As you can see, the pyramid gets bigger as you build it. I don't know that if you had the first edition that you definitely need to rush out and buy the new one, because again, I don't think very much changed. But
I heard they streamlined some things and they put the expansions into the game. And one of my concerns about the old version is that if you put in the expansion, it's just a ton of stuff. And this new one seems to be a combination, like Essential Edition, like, you know.
Yeah, I think that's a better way to describe it. It includes some kind of the expansions. I didn't play with all of them. It doesn't include that weird one where you walk down the paths, and it doesn't include the one where one player plays against all the rest. Those two are definitely not in it.
The Tassetti was the one.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there may be bits of that one in there, because I know that one added a new color that you could access, and that's in here. There are 5 colors in the game that you can use, although you don't use all 5 in every game. You pick a certain number based on the number of players.
Tassetti is the first expansion, which added the priests that go down the track.
And that's not in here.
Okay, so it was a little bit too. It wasn't necessary. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not it. That was. I mean, yeah, that was some extra rules. But the game, I mean, maybe to the extent that there were new power tiles that were added in one of the expansions, those are in here, but you can just choose not to use them. I don't know that they make that big of a difference. Anyway, it's an older game that has held up really well and is still very loved, and I think the new edition looks great as well. And there you go.
Yeah, it's the new edition is the one I'm eager to play again and maybe even get back into my collection. What kind of a cut the deal for me for Kemet, the initial one, was that I played with the expansion, and I really liked it with the expansion, but it was too complex with the expansion. So I wanted to have I wanted to have kind of a essential edition or something like Kemet Plus, not exactly Kemet Plus, a ton of stuff, but this one like Kemet Enhanced, something like that.
Yeah.
That I wanted to have, but the new edition seems to be something like that. But yeah, who knows?
So one problem that the new edition kind of solves, just halfway, is it comes with enough player aids to give everybody one, and and it comes all of those tiles that sort of sit on one end of the board and nobody can see. They're in a tray that you can easily pass to people to look at.
Yeah.
So that part's nice.
Yep. All right. So my Call of the Old pick is from 2013. So we go 1 year forward, and it hasn't had any kind of a new edition, and I'm not sure it will. Maybe in a future, but with that company in mind, I don't know if they are still alive or not. So the game is called Belfort.
Oh, yeah.
If you remember Belfort,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there was a new expansion or something like that. I don't even know. I played it a long time
There
ago.
was I think there was a second edition that came out with the most recent expansion.
Was it?
Right
The
before the
version?
company went on to life
Oh,
support.
10th anniversary edition. Okay, I got it. It wasn't really a second edition. It was. It's just a reprint. Who cares? I mean, like the second edition would be even better. I think, like re-implementation kind of like that. This one seems to be just the second edition was 2012. The first edition was 2011. Oh, it's even further back. Okay. But it's an old game, and this one is a worker placement game / area control game where you are hiring those different gnomes, or like, oh my god. So, is there any kind of a picture that's a good quality? Okay. So you have your gnomes and dwarves, and you have worker placement spots. I'm not gonna search for these pictures too much. And you collect different resources and money, etc. And you want that in order to build different buildings, which are cards. And those cards give you access to the places on the board. Maybe we can find it here. There are some cards as well. But they're like pub, garden, towers, whatever it is, all of that. And they give you access to build on those specific icons, specific building types on the board in order to have kind of an area controlled stuff going on in there as well. So whoever gets their most houses will win points, etc., blah, blah, blah. So this one was all about a really smart worker placement, in my opinion, where you can upgrade worker to a super worker so you can collect the double. And it was rather nice, streamlined. The area control was also nice and streamlined, and you can have those different guilds. If you go there, you can build those guilds, like control yourself, or you can just use them for 1 coin, so you can get some kind of ability, and there could be a little bit of take that, etc. The whole game, the whole package just looks nice, and I like the combination of. It kind of feels like you are building something, because on a card, you build a card that says a pub or something like that, you build it down and it creates super dwarves now, whatever, and when you put the house on that particular space on the board, which is colorful and kind of represents that place, it feels thematic. You've built something.
Yeah.
So I really like that. Belfort, a nice package of area control / worker placement.
Yep, I agree. I have not played that game for a long time, and I got the most recent expansion for it, but I never. I don't know if I even opened it yet, so I might have to try this one again sometime.
More cards. Yeah, I don't know the latest expansion, but it seems like this game has flown like it's highly regarded, but right now I haven't seen like anybody talking about this newest expansion or game itself in 2020.
Well, that's because the company that produces it is kind of on life support. So,
yeah, probably it's not in a wide distribution, and I don't know if the new printing of the game is on the shelves. Maybe it's just a Kickstarter fulfillment. That's it. Maybe they won't have any enough production there. All right, so this was Cult of the Old. Let's get to the funky components. And we're going to talk about some weird, some odd, and some beautiful components. So, okay. Kyle, why don't you start?
All right. Well, keeping with our theme, the components today are from a game that works well with the larger number of players. And they are a very fun, nice, high-quality foam component from a game called Cash and Guns, and they are, of course, the foam guns. The game comes with a bunch of foam rubber guns that don't look very real, but, hey. And if you get the expansion, it comes with some special ones as well. And also, I played it at a convention once, and the prize was to get a machine gun as well. So I have that one. They don't do anything. Well, some of the special sizes of guns do special things in one of the expansions, but really they're just these nice, very lightweight, very light-hearted foam rubber guns. And in the game, you will take well, you won't take turns, but every round you'll pick somebody to point them at, and maybe you'll shoot the person, maybe you won't. It's a very it's a great game that is a lot of fun with a lot of groups of people. The rules are super simple. If you add in the expansion, they can get a little bit more complicated. But basically, you decide you've got only a few, I think only 3 real bullets, and the rest are all bluffs. And each round, you're going to use one of them. And so you got to make the real ones count, because if you shoot the person, then that person doesn't get to take any money that round. And if the person bows out, you can sort of hide under the desk. And then you might have wasted your bullet because you only have 3 real ones, like I said. But the guns themselves are just a lot of fun to play with. They really bring the game alive to life. I mean, there was a version where you used finger guns, but this one is definitely the superior of the versions. Anyway, that is my interesting component: the guns in Cash and Guns.
All right, so my pick for today is a funky components from the flow history, and these ones are the player markers, and it's from the deluxeified version.
Oh, those little tiny coins.
No, to be honest, I like the coins. If I can find them here, but I do like this kind of a resin kind of a representing the different wonders of the world, or like statues, etc. I like that, of different colors. They look really neat. They look different from your usual player markers. All you do, how you use them, you can see here to say that you want to get this card. I'm reserving the card. I'm bidding on that. That's it, and nothing else that you do with these. But they stand out. They are tall. They are very distinctive colors. You can see right away who's bidding on what, and even if you might be like a little bit colorblind, so they are different shapes as well. So they might help with that. I don't know how colorblind friendly this game is, but because they have the different shapes, so you can at least maybe differentiate them based on that. So yeah, that's my pick from the flow of history. A cool, nice civilization building game, card game more, and an engine building.
All right, there we go.
And that's it for today's topics. The smaller topics. So now we're gonna get to the bigger one, the main one. It's called Top 10 Games Best with the Max Player Count. I want to get back to the beginning of our episode where I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Is that when I look at my at all the games that I played, I realized that usually, I mean, I extremely rarely when I enjoy or play the max player count. When a game is 2 to 5, it's usually 3 or 4 players. It's always like the sweet spot somewhere in the middle. You never play the max count. But with this one, it's not like, for me at least with my picks, it's not like these games are best only with that max player count. It's more like they play same, or they play great with 5, but they can play great with 4 as well, you know. There are some of those games with if I could have a chance, I would play them with one other number, or just that one number.
Yeah, for me, I went through, first of all, and I made a list of games that I'm even willing to play with the max player count, because usually that's a non-starter for me. Usually, you know, if a game says it can be played by 6 people, that's probably not true. So I made a list of games that I was willing to play with the max player count. And then I went through that list and I said, are there any of these games that I would prefer to play with the max player count if possible?
Yeah, yeah. You kind of describe the same for me. There are some games that I want to play only with max player count, and
Yeah,
some
there
games
are some here too.
I can play
But
less as well. But yeah, I would. Yeah, something like that. Something in between. One more thing is that I excluded solo games and two-player games because
I did as well.
there's just it's
That
not my choice.
feels like a different list. Uh,
This thunder is just going crazy. Oh my god.
is it really thunder? It sounds like a car.
No, no. Maybe it sounds for you here from through the
Oh,
microphone, but it's really loud
oh, okay.
thunder. We're gonna see
Make sure your
lightning as
window's
well.
closed.
Oh, they are open. Oh, they are wide open.
Oh, okay. Very
Yeah.
well.
No, they're almost closed. So anyway, why don't we start with this topic and get to our number 10s?
All right. My number 10 is a game that does not show up on very many lists. In fact, the first two on here don't show up on very many lists. And that's because I don't know that I love the game as much as I used to in this
Mm-hmm.
case. And that game is Zombicide. Now,
Okay.
the problem with Zombicide, I mean, there are a few problems, and it has solved many of them over the years. But the one problem it has not solved is that all of its scenarios are set up for 6 characters. So no matter what you're doing, you're going to have to divide 6 characters up among your number of players. And, if you're playing it solo and you have to control 6 characters, that's really not very much fun. And if you're playing it with 3 players and everyone has to control 2, that's not very much fun. The best way to do it is each person only has to worry about one character, takes one turn, and it moves on. So I think Zombicide is a game that if you're going to play it, it's definitely better to play with the highest player count possible, just so that you can really not have a lot of annoyance of having to deal with so many different characters.
Yeah. All right. See that. Never played that one, so cannot comment on that. All right.
Yeah, I have an irrational love for Zombicide, but I probably need to have a come to Jesus moment with it because I never want to play it, mostly because of that reason, that
Yeah.
it just requires me to do too much.
All right. So my number 10 is a game that you don't enjoy that much, but I think you might agree. You might agree that this one is still best with the max player count, and that's called Wildlands. Windlands. Oh my, Windlands is another game that's coming out soon. No. So Wildlands, while subjectively likable or not so likable game on our podcast. So in this game, as you can see, there's a board with different characters. What makes it better with more players? Because the less players you have, the space is still the same. Thus, there's more of running around, maybe not really, or you are avoiding another player at some points, trying to get the crystals. Becomes more of a hunt for crystals, less of a, oh, this is the dungeon, you must fight as well. With more players, you cannot avoid everyone, which means that you are stuck in this kind of a pitfall where you are fighting each other and trying to get the crystals, so it gets the maximum out of this game. Because you get points from fighting other players and getting the crystals, and eventually you will bump at somebody somewhere, because as in this game, uh, not all of your characters come out at the same time, and with some of them, another player can just boop, I come out from this space now. So because they have all the different spaces assigned to them throughout the game, and then you kind of bring them into the game as you want, or you need to bring at least one, but you can bring more, and then at some point you can bring out a character at the point where another player is already has gotten their crystal there. They're near the crystal, and then you're like, oh, but I'm here. So it happens, and it's fun. It happens more with more players. So 4 players is the max, and it's great with 4 players. I can play with 3 players as well, but yeah, 4 is the most fun. Wildlands.
I would agree with that statement. I would agree that it is best with the max number of players. I still don't enjoy the game, but
yeah, I kind of this one came up last. Like, I don't have any extremely particular order of the games. That it's not like this one is the best with max players, this one less. No, it's not like that. I just went through my list of games from the highest to the lowest rating, and my higher rated games are more up in the list, so the ones I like more. So yeah, but they all do their max player count fine.
Okay.
Let's go to number 9.
Right. Number 9 is a game we don't talk about a lot. But it is definitely a game that I don't think I would ever play it. In fact, I'm not even sure you can play it without its. I mean, you can, but it's not going to be balanced or nearly as fun if you don't have the max player count, which is 6. The game is Here I Stand. Here I Stand is an old war game. And it is about the Reformation Wars and Martin Luther, and it's basically like a 6-player Twilight Struggle, but you have each of the different factions kind of counterbalances another, and so you've got the Protestants and the Catholics, and you've got the English and the French, and you've got the Spanish and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, or no, I guess the Austro-Turkish, something like that. It's the Turks and the Austrians is who you've got. Sorry, that's what I was confused with. And it's really, you're going through the game, kind of a Twilight Struggle type mechanism where you're playing the card and making the choices. But it is definitely it is a great game if you have 6 people and about 5 hours, and can get it set up before they show up, because that takes another hour. It is a huge game, very sprawling, very satisfying if you can play it, but it's a very difficult one to learn and teach. But again, I don't know that it's really any fun at all unless you have exactly 6 players, which is the max player count.
Yeah, I have not played that one, but I can see
I'm
that.
Not surprised.
Every control combat type games are usually the more people, the better the conflict, which is the central point of these kinds of games, to initiate the conflict.
And it's not just that; it's that the different factions are working at cross purposes. And so, if you're missing, for example, the Protestants, well, then the Catholics are going or don't have anyone to balance against them. And so what they're doing is going to be very much easier to spread around without that influence. And so if you say, well, okay, well then we've got 5 people, so someone's going to play this role. Some piece always gets left out, and it's all 6 of the pieces working together that makes the game very enjoyable.
Yeah, all right. So my number 9 is the game that it kind of a recurring theme in my list. It's going to be there on my list, that the more players, the more chaos, the more fun. With some of these games, you need to get more chaos in order to get more fun. And one of these games is Off the Rails. Remember me talking about that one?
I do remember you talking about that one. The very, very purple game.
Yeah, so very purple game with weird shaped things here, but is it like a print and play version here, something like that? I don't know.
That is an ugly game board. I'm sorry.
Oh, here you can see. Okay, but this one is a kind of you build those different tracks in order to collect the crystals, and they pop up each round. You kind of take out some crystals, you put them based on the certain card, and then you go for it. You have those dice in those cards, wagons, whatever they are, and the dice determine the speed, and you can lower and increase the speed and do different things. And while you are just riding through those crystals, you can pick up one of those crystals. But if there is a coal, you have to pick coal before any crystal, and it takes up space in your card. And then you have to ride out of the board in order to kind of collect them behind your stockpile, your player mat. Then you can score them. If they're in your card, then one of the possibilities, you will ride off the rails because you have mismatched the speed, and then you lose your crystals, or you bump into each other. There are rules. If you bump from the side or head to head, whatever, you can lose some crystals as well. So you pick up those things, and until you cannot get out, you are not safe. And that's the whole fun of the game. Sometimes you want to ride into your opponent so they will lose the crystals. You just bump into them, and it is fun, because otherwise, if it would be just if just two of you, I go here, you go here, we collect crystals, we go out, we collect them, and if I'm lucky, I got the more expensive crystals, then I win the game. It's no fun. There's no tension to that. With 4 players, cards and rails, they build up. The board builds up with those tracks, and you're all over the place. And then the chasm happens. It basically signals the end of the game, where you can be crashed under this, in this cave or whatever, wherever you are. And yeah, I don't know. It's just a lot of fun.
Okay.
When you have more build up, and for that you need more players, and bumping into each other, it's just fun.
Yeah, I have not played this one. The board looks like a Now and Later, but other than that, I don't have much to say.
To be honest, once you start playing, you forget about the board. It's better in person. It's not so good. And I accented the purple, too much purple, to the designer, or maybe I did the review or something like that, and the designer commented on that. And the designer commented, I do love purple, and it's like, okay,
no.
I see that. How could you?
Okay.
Yeah, but in person, it's better. It's better.
Okay.
All right, my number 9, Off the Rails.
All right. My number 8. This is a game. I don't know. This one might even find its way on your list. I don't know, but it's a game that when it came out, it was just a super hit. Now it's quieted down a bit. The game is Dead of Winter, and this is a game that really works well with the maximum number of players. In fact, if you play with fewer than the max, especially if you play with 2 players, you're really sacrificing one of the better aspects of the game, which is this sort of the hidden traitor and sort of everyone working at cross purposes aspect, which is
2 players
what makes the
garbage.
game.
No.
Yeah, you're really sacrificing the soul of the game if you play with a smaller player count.
Yeah,
and you could play it with 4 or with 5. 3 is okay, but the more that you have in this game, just really the more that's going on, and the more that you have to watch people, and the more sort of suspicion you have to garner, and that makes the game a lot more fun. So this is one that I would definitely always play with the max player count if possible.
Yeah, with this one, for my personal taste, I would not agree that it's best with 5. I think it's best with 4. It bounces well, and it just, with 5, I felt like it drags a little bit too much, and maybe a little bit too much chaos. But I can see where it benefits from. I mean, like, if there's a traitor amongst you, and it's extremely hard to play and to win with the traitor. With 5 players, at least there's 4 versus 1 kind of a thing going on. At least something, But
right.
Yeah, 5 for me is just dragging too much in this game. So I like it more with exactly 4. 3 is not so good, because then the traitor, I mean, it's just a traitor game. 2 is full cooperative game, and it loses
2
its
is not.
beauty. Yeah. So 4 is my pick.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, why not? All right, so let me get here. My number 8 is a game that I've talked about before. It's a beautiful game. It's an easy game, and because it has some random elements and area control, I find that a little bit more chaos and a little bit more struggle on the board is needed in order for it to be the most fun. It's Rise of Tribes. Tribes. Rise of Tribes is a civilization themed game. Let's say that it's a civilization themed game. It's not a civilization building game.
Even that is generous.
Yeah, but it's yeah. Let's say you have those dice and you use the dice based on where they are. If there are too many moons, then you can use it as a lower action. If there are suns, then you can have a better version of that action, etc. And you are choosing those different actions that you want to do, and the events come up, etc. The more players you have, the more competition on the board you have, because it's also area control. The more events might come up, and the more the dice can vary, etc. So you cannot really have a runaway leader or something like that, because nobody's touching that gather, and then that person just does all the suns, etc. So it's ever changing. I don't know. It just feels right, because even with 4 players, if you don't have enough people out and you want to grow, and there's the grow action, and other people have, and they're going with, like, they are moving and they are fighting each other, and they are not really picking on you, because you are like the 4th player who is the lowest count of people there, so they are just fighting each other while you are gaining your strength back. So there's that opportunity. If you're playing with 3 or 2 players, it just head on, and you're constantly watched by all players. And if you are beaten down, then it's hard to get up from there. Harder. And all the different special abilities and things, if you can do that, it's also cool when you have more abilities going on. So yeah, my number 8, 5 Tribes.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever played it with the max player count.
It's 4, so
yeah,
it's not such a big deal.
Sure.
All right, let's go to number 7. I'm sorry about my incompetence in putting the Rise of Tribes into words. I don't know why it was hard for me to explain that game. Though I do know this game, I do like this game. I think that the thunder is losing my light. The thunder is stealing my lightning. Okay, no, whatever.
I was going to say, we better quit while you're still ahead. Yeah.
The thunder is stealing my lightning.
So my number 7.
Okay.
My number 7 is a game that is very chaotic, and the chaos is really what you're signing up for. You play this game for chaotic experiences. And because of the way that some of the events happen and the things sort of come forth, playing this with the max player count really gives you the best experience. The game is Galaxy Trucker.
Okay.
And it's a game where adding more players doesn't really add very much more time, because the biggest piece of the game happens simultaneously. And in fact, the whole game really happens simultaneously. There's a point where one person can finish building a ship and then has to wait a minute or so while the timer's running out for the other people to catch up. But really, the rest of the game is just going to be, you're going through space and seeing what happens, and then based on your order, that's going to determine what happens to you, and whether you have access to things or whether things have access to you. And having just that max player count allows that phase to be the most interesting, because once that sort of, you can be knocked out during that phase. And if you are in a 2-player game, then the other person just kind of continues and gets all the bonuses until the end. But with 4 people in there, it's going to keep that phase a little bit more tight and tense and make each of your decisions a little bit more meaningful. I mean, look, I'll play it with 2. I'll play it with any number, but I think playing it with the max player count is definitely where this game shines.
Yeah. I've not played this one. I was about to put another game on my list, which is also it is best with 4. I have my analogy to that one, Goblins Incorporated, but I felt guilty to putting it on another list. So, but yeah, basically the same. More chaos is better in these kinds of games. My number 7 is another game which is called a family game, but it's a cutthroat family game, and I feel like it is best with the maximum number of players because the same, a lot of chaos, and if I get eaten, then it's sad, but if 4 more players get eaten, then it's beautiful, and it's Survive, Escape from Atlantis.
Huh.
So let me see if okay. Oh, no.
Oh, that's not the version I'm used to seeing. There we go.
That's wrong. The newest one. Okay. So yeah, Survive Escape from Atlantis is a 4-player game, like 2 to 4. It seems something like that. Yeah, it is. So I don't know if you can play it solo. It's weird, but in this game you have those different meeples that you put on those tiles, which are mountains and forest and sand, whatever. And the Atlantis is sinking, and you want to get your people off the island, and those people underneath them, you have different numbers, and at the end of the game, when some of your people have escaped, then you look underneath them and then you count up the numbers, you get the points, and whoever has the most value in people, sounds weird, is gonna win the game. And the chaos is in, like, if you play the 2-player game, there's less conflict between players themselves. With more players, there's more dice rolling, more monsters, more everything. This game is all about just trying to survive, going in different directions, panic, etc. Kind of a panic, trying to, get rid of the monsters and sink the other players, destroy their boats, etc. So all the fun is in the interaction between players, I think so. So that's why 4 players is the best way to play this game. My number 7.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the biggest problem if you play with a lower count is exactly what you said, which is that the monsters or the sea creatures just don't move enough if you're playing in a 2-player game. Yeah. And so it could be that they're kind of stuck on one side of the board and then aren't really an event.
Yeah, and if 2 players are against that creature and they move that to the side of the board, in 4-player games there's usually 2 of us who like sharks and want sharks to move towards the opponents, and the other 2 wants to move it back, etc. So yeah, that's that. Survive Escape from Atlantis, number 7. Let's go to number 6. All right.
Right. My number 6 is a game that it's a cooperative real-time game. And those games often do work very well with larger player counts just because there's not going to really be a lot of downtime in the game. And in this game is Project Elite. And Project Elite, the more people you have, that's going to be more territory you can cover and less that you have to manage yourself, because you don't have all that many dice to roll, you don't have all that much you can do, and you have just a very short window of time to do it before then the monsters come out and overwhelm you. And so having the max player count allows you to sort of have this kind of a tactical teamwork type of experience look, still, it's real time, so you can't do that much tactical planning, but you can say, look, I'm going to go do this, you're going to go do this, and then everybody gets started, and you roll the dice and start the timer and get going, and then your plans fall apart. But it's more fun if those plans fall apart when you have a lot more helpers to try and cover the territory. I really enjoy the game. I even enjoy it solo, although that's a lot of brain power that's required. But with the larger player counts, it's definitely a better game.
All right. Yeah, I've never played that one, so can't really comment on that. All right. So my number 6 is a game we already talked about today, but I think you haven't talked about this one on this topic, or on this top 10.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Kemet.
Shocking.
Yeah, so Kemet plays up to 5 players. Okay, the newer version, let's say. I've never played the newer version, but people say it's best with 4, maybe, but the new version doesn't have any pictures, sadly. But with
Showed some
Kemet,
earlier.
oh, I showed some, but they weren't really gameplay pictures. Nobody just got into that. But with this one, this game is the amount of attacks and different kind of interactions is what makes this game fun. You have to attack, and if you have different people to attack, that's great. You have different opportunities. Plus, with this game, you have to stay somewhat hidden because you're almost to win. If there are only 3 of you, the 2 will just pile up, and then the 2 just cooperate and then try to bring you down. With 5 players, somebody's gonna get unnoticed. That was one of my games where we played a 5-player game with expansion, and another player was almost to win, and the other players didn't see that I was also almost to win, because I got this kind of I had this one turn when I saw that, I could get 2 more points. They didn't see it right away. So with 5 players, you can not see everything, what every player is doing or thinking, and that's where it's fun. It's tension. Somebody's gonna win, like that. So I like that aspect in this game, and it's an area control. It's a combat game. It just needs more kind of a chaos. But in this one, even with max player count, it feels like a controlled chaos. And the only things that are not under my control, it feels like that. The bigger ones is that I cannot really watch over every other player on the table. So somebody might win before me. So, but it's fun.
Okay. Yeah, we've already talked about it, and I do think it works better with the higher player counts as well. So there you go. I did not put it on my list because I don't think I've played it with 5. But
yeah. But I can play with 4 as well. I don't want to play with less than 4 or 5. Let's get to number 5.
All right. Number 5 kind of feels a little bit like Kemet. This is a game that really, I think, works well with an odd player count. And it's a 3 to 5 player game. And that game is Rising Sun.
Okay.
Now, Rising Sun, if you have 3 players, then what it does is in the game you're making these alliances, and having one can be good, but it's good to have somebody who's not having one as well, because that adds some different aspects to the game. And I think having it's good with 3, but I think it's best with 5, because then you've got really everybody very involved in the game. Because you're taking a turn on everybody's turn, right? Everybody participates in the action to some extent. It doesn't really drag things down. In the game itself, the actual action phase isn't that long or complicated, but sort of the interactions with people and the way that the game is going to be played is really best with the higher player counts, preferably 5. Also, you'll see more of the special abilities, not all of them, because if you add the expansions, there's too many for one game. But you'll see all of the different abilities. It makes the honor track more interesting because it's harder to get to the top or the bottom, and some of the abilities are dependent upon where you are on that track. I just really like it with 5. Not to say that I wouldn't play it with 3. I have, in fact, I did a couple of weeks ago. But but I really do think this one shines with the highest player count possible.
Yeah, I realized that I do not like it with 3 players. It just it can be that situation where on the wrong, might be the wrong timing where 2 people combine their forces against 1, and it's not always the case in every turn, something like that, every round, but at certain high points or high, let's say, situations in the game, 3 players just doesn't work. I played with 4, but yeah, I haven't played with 5. I have avoided with 5 because its cousin Blood Rage just doesn't work for me with 5, for example, and they seem a little bit similar in that vibe. So
yeah, the difference is that Blood Rage wasn't designed for 5. It was designed for 4, and 5 was an expansion. This one is 5 out of the box, and it's really designed to that, and it works. I wouldn't play Blood Rage with 5, but this one I definitely would.
Okay. Yeah, it might be good with 5 as well, so I haven't played that one, but I like it 4. I prefer it 4, not 3. Yeah. All right, so my number 5 is the game I've talked about before. I have mentioned it quite a few times, and I feel like this is the game that's best with the maximum number of players, and it's Age of Thieves. And in Age of Thieves, as we talked already before in other podcast episodes, etc., is that you have this cool board, maybe not extremely functional, but it's fine. And you have your own dudes that are running around and trying to collect crystals and etc., and get to the main crystal, which is worth the most points. You are thieves. And the cool thing about that one is the planning, the initiative order of those things, how you plan, how you use your action cubes. The more action cubes you use in one particular action, the more likely you're going to be first. But sometimes you want to be last. And with more players, because the guards, the NPC, basically has their own turn as well. So with more players, with more different interactive elements, this game shines the most, because then you have to consider the different players and different aspects of what is gonna be extremely important. Like, should I want to do this action the first thing I do in this game, or I want to do this action last because I want to see everybody else do whatever they do, because I want them to steal the crystal, the big crystal. But the thing is that you can steal from each other as well through those different special equipment, like a rod or something like that, etc. You can try to steal from others, and you can make somebody in the same turn steal that crystal and then go again. You go last. Well, they have stolen the crystal. You go to them and you try to steal it back to yourself. You don't have to go past the guards or something like that. There are those different aspects of the game that work with more players, where there's more interaction. And yeah, this is the interaction game. It needs more players. That's my pick for number 5.
Okay, great. I think you're the only person who's played this game, but I don't mean of us. I mean in the world.
Yeah. No, it's just a small company that hasn't marketed this one enough. But if somebody picks it up, a bigger company, it might be a good game for them. All right, let's go to number 4. Number 4.
All right, my number 4. My number 4 is a game that I have talked about a bit. No, it's not Summoner Wars. But so the next 4 games on here, I mean, these were very easy when we decided we were going to do this list. These were kind of the first 4 I thought about. This is a game, we talked about it on the reprint list, and it comes up a bit on my lists, but it is a game that is really best with its max count, and that is Chaos in the Old World. Chaos in the Old World has 4, well, okay, talking about the base game, has 4 factions. And kind of like in Here I Stand, those 4 factions, each one provides an interesting balance to another one. And so if you're playing with fewer than 4, then one faction doesn't have a natural counterweight. So in the game, if you have all 4 players, you're going to see all the different special abilities, all the different characteristics, and all the different interactions that are possible. And that's really what you need. You know, there's one faction that really just wants to be left alone. There's one faction that wants to go in and destroy. There's one faction that's easy to destroy and wants to spread out. And if it spreads out, it's going to win. And there's a faction that wants to wait and watch. And you need all 4 of those to really have the fullest game experience. I'll play it with 3. Geez, I'll play this game with any player count you give me. But with 4 is really the best way to experience all the game has to offer.
Okay. All right.
Now,
Yeah.
I think you can play with 5 with the expansion, but I only went with base game on this list.
Yeah, I think, let me see if there are games that Survive was the one that also can be increased to a 6 or something like that. Well, I don't remember, or 5. But yeah, I didn't consider any expansion, so
yeah, I didn't either.
It's like the best count in a base game. All right. My number 4 is a tiny game that I have played it most with 2 players, as a 2-player game. But because it's just been the situation, there are particular few people who love this game to the core, and every time they see me, they like say, "Can we play Red 7?" There's one particular person who always asks me if I have Red 7 on me, because at some point I usually had this in my kind of a backpack. No, just it's a small card game. But Red 7, a kind of a tricky cultured multi-use of the cards, a small card game where you play out those cards in your palette, whatever, something like that, and then you trying to win the particular round by having the most or the best of something, and then it goes to the next player and they have to trump you in that, or they will be out of the game. With 2 players, it's just 2 of you, and you need to consider just 2 palettes of cards, and it's like a duel, but it doesn't shine that well. It doesn't shine as much. It's fine. I can play it totally with 2. I played it with 2 a ton. But with 4 players, the max player count, you have to consider the different palettes. There's more competition going on. Maybe a little more chaos, but a little bit more change in the rules and things and such. I mean, the rules that there's that the center card is the rule card. So if you play a card as a rule, then you can change it. And sometimes if you're playing with 4 players, somebody can change it in your benefit or whatever, you know. It's just with 4 players, it has the full potential of you have to deal with the situation, what you're going to do. With 2 players, it's maybe a little bit too much control, except if you have bad cards in your hand from the start. So it becomes a little bit lackluster, but it's still fun. With 4 players, you can get a win out even if you have a bad hand of cards, because everybody's kind of manipulating everybody, or like yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Red 7, my number
There
4.
you go.
Let's go to number 3.
Okay.
Right.
My number 3, I think, is the only party-ish game on the list. Yeah. It is a game that is. I really enjoy the game. It's very simple, but when you play it with fewer player counts, you end up not having access to all of the features the game has to offer. Some of the roles aren't available. Some of the sort of things that make the game really interesting just don't work with small player counts. And that game is Deception Murder in Hong Kong.
Okay.
So it's sort of the same style of game of this sort of one person isn't talking and is giving some kind of abstract clues, and people are trying to figure it out. There is a player that is actively working against the group. If you add in some of the, if you have enough players, you can add in additional roles, and those additional roles give a person who knows who the guilty party is, give an accomplice for the murderer, those roles really add to what the game offers, make it a lot more interesting. Also, because in the game you only get one time to start a guess, if you have fewer players, I find it's a little bit easier for the traitor player, the murderer player, to kind of win. But if he can get the other people to waste their shot a little earlier, and that's not going to happen as much with a higher player count. So this is a game that works really well, very easy to play with a large group of people, very easy to play in general, not a whole lot of rules there, and definitely works better with a higher player count.
Okay. Yep. My number 3 is a building game that I think works best with the maximum player count because of the market mechanic, and that's Castles of Mad King Ludwig. And for me, Castle of Mad King Ludwig plays. It's not good with 2 because the market change and just no struggle, and like there's no point. It's all about this game is of course all about the building of the castles, but also about setting the prices for the different rooms. And there's more tension, and there's more kind of a consideration of how you spend your money with more players, because once you, like in a round, you go around the table, you are the one setting the prices, and then after that 3 other players are doing that and you are not. So only one round, or like let's say one of your turns, you are collecting money and maybe spending as well, but 3 other turns you are just spending the money. So it becomes even more strategic and in how you spend it. You have to value every room, every let's say every penny in your pockets, etc. So it kind of shines at that, and kind of the bigger change in the market as well is always welcome, because sometimes you don't have the right rooms, but if 4 players constantly, everybody's buying a ton of rooms, and then it's all changing. So I like that.
Yeah, I agree with this. This was on my short list.
Yeah. All right, let's get to number 2. Right.
All right, my number 2 is a nice new game. It is a game that I started playing by myself, then I played with one person, then I played with 2 people, and then finally I played with 3, and that is definitely the best way to play this game, which is a 4-player game, me and 3 others. The game is Dune Imperium. Came out late last year, and when you add, look, it works fine with the lower player counts, although you have kind of a dummy player in a 2-player game, which is okay. But when you play with 3 or 4, it really shines because everyone is really doing everything. There's competition for every aspect of the board. The sort of getting ahead in one of the tracks becomes very important. It just really heightens all of the tension, and it makes the combats that happen every round It makes them a lot more interesting. Oh, it looks like somebody upgraded the components significantly. But this is definitely a game to really bring out when you're going to have the full player count. It's a longer game just because of how it works, but it doesn't feel long, even with a large group. Well, a large group, I mean, 4 players. Definitely really shines with 4 players.
Yeah, I've not played this one, so not sure about that. So that's that. My number 2, and though you haven't played it that much, but you might agree, and I think most people will agree, that it's best with the maximum player count, 4 players, and that's Time Stories. Time Stories is a kind of an RPG-like game, and if you're playing with 2 players, you have to control more characters, which is already taking away from the whole experience, because in this one you're representing that person, something like that. It's like you have its ability, you feel like part of the team. If you play with 2 players, you feel like you're playing a mechanic or something like that. With 3 players, there are some, like, this game was made as a 4-player game. With 3 players, they have some like other rules going on, like you have a companion or whatever, or you can play with 3, but then you get more time, whatever. It's designed to have 4 players, because then you have the full team of 4 different characters interacting with each other, discovering the story, etc. It shouldn't be played. It should be played only as a 4-player game. I have played with 3 players as well, and it works, because at some point there was like particular scenarios where I had to play with 3 because we didn't have the 4th player, and I really wanted to get through the scenario. So, but if I get the chance to play with 4, I'd rather play it with 4.
I've only ever played it with 3, so I won't comment. Yeah.
Yeah,
The one thing I will say is that Destiny's game that I talked about earlier today, if you play it solo, it feels like it'll give you the Time Stories vibe, because you're trying to do each time through the game better.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's my comment.
Yeah, I don't care about Time Stories where like I have to do better or something like that. I just love discovering those stories themselves, and those different cards,
Sure.
and the panoramic pictures, etc. So the new Blue series, whatever they are, I was starting with the Hadel project that I played. I really like the new kind of edition or new system better because of that.
Okay.
All right, let's get to number 1.
Okay. My number 1 is kind of like some of the other games I've talked about. It's best with the max player count, because you'll experience all the game has to offer. And this was a very obvious number 1 as soon as we said we were doing the list, and that game is Root. And in Root, when you have, in fact, some of the different, I mean, there's a bunch of different factions now that have different abilities, and some of them don't really work very well without more players. And so if you have the maximum player count, you're going to have the ability to see a lot more and experience a lot more. But even if you're not playing with one of those, the way that the interactions work, and the way that the combat works, and the way that, since each player is focusing on a specific path, trying to do a specific thing to win, having different people to interact and thwart and pay attention to that, it just really makes the game more interesting. It makes all of the characters better. I will play it with any player count, because I really do like the game, although I don't know that it's the best solo, unfortunately. I'll play it with any player count, but I just really like it if you get 4 people who are able to play it. Now, I don't love teaching it at 4 people, because that just adds a whole lot more work to that very laborious process anyway. But playing it with 4 is really the way to go. And that was a very obvious, immediate thought when we were making this list. So my number 1 is Root.
Yeah, not the one that I have played, so no comments on that. But I can totally see that if you have asymmetric powers and they are all balanced against each other, then yeah, max players. All right, my number one hasn't been a number one for a long time.
Oh,
I'm the champion of this game, and I had to put it as a number one somewhere, and it's here. It's Cyclades or Cyclades or whatever, and with the Hades expansion as well. So this one plays up to 5 players. I can play it with less number of players. I can play it with 4, 3, fine, but I mean, 4 is a sweet spot as well. But 5, the thing is, because with the 5 you have the biggest board, you have more interaction with each other. You have a less of a you might have more of an opportunity to go unnoticed and just snap the game. Like with Kemet, it's the same, and snap the win, not the game. But with this one, with 5 players, there's more monsters that might come out, more different like gods and things, and just the most components with the most players, and that means that there's more interaction, more fighting each other, and more tension. Cyclades brings out all of that in a bigger count of players, but 4 is totally fine as well. 3 is fine. I liked it. It's okay, but I mean, like 3 players might be a little bit unbalanced in some situations. So
okay. Well, there you go. Yeah, I like that. That game kind of fits the same feel as Kemet does in a lot of ways.
yeah,
But it's, and so I can see if one's on your list, it makes a lot of sense that the other one would be, and I can certainly see where you're coming from with that one.
yeah. All right. So this was topic of the day: top 10 games with the max player count, best with max player count. And next time we're gonna get to cooperative games. We have to
We're going to
reschedule
work
that.
together to get our list. Oh.
Yeah, we have to reschedule that just a little bit. So I don't even remember when we had to do
I
that.
thought we were going to do it next week because remember we talked about it being done in time for Eurovision.
Oh yeah. So it will be moved 1 week back, and then we're
1 week
gonna
up.
backwards or up or whatever how you say that.
Forward.
It was on 29th. Now it's 22.
Yeah, that's a week forward.
Okay, weird language. Never
We're
understand
coming
that.
forward in time.
Okay, yeah.
It's happening earlier.
So Back to the Future is, oh, I see. Okay, Back to the Future. That's where it came from. You go back to the future. That means you go 1 week later.
Did the thunder get into your place?
Yeah,
All
and lightning.
right.
It's getting exciting.
Well, it's getting something.
We're getting to some Eurovision references. Okay, that means we have to end this episode before it
We
gets
do.
weird. But yeah, see you next week with the topic of the day: top 10 cooperative games.
That
And
sounds exciting.
we'll see how much crossover we'll have, because we might have some, but there are quite a few games that you played recently that you said you really enjoyed, and yeah, I'm not lately the biggest cooperative games fan. So
I guess we'll have to see next week.
true that. Anyway, thank you for watching,
All right.
folks.
Bye
Have a
bye.
nice day, night, morning, whatever.